Today I will finish the text and I will discuss a few questions, topics. Let me see if I have the questions here. So in the last class we saw how Orestes speaks of his difference with others because he is a free man, and he tells Zeus that you have done the blunder, that you have given man freedom. So everything else in nature is under the strict control of gods excepting man, and therefore man is different and in a way against nature. So after he expressed how freedom crashed upon him, he goes on to speak about his new experience, and on page 119 he tells Zeus, "For I, Zeus, am a man, and every man must find out his own way. Nature abhors man, and you too, God of gods, abhor mankind." So in this sentence, the unique nature of man, because of his freedom, man is in a way against nature. So nature abhors him, and even Zeus, the god of gods, abhors him. So abhor is a very strong word. It means that even Zeus cannot control man. And then Orestes says, "You are God and I am free. Each of us is alone, and our anguish is akin. How can you know I did not try to feel remorse in the long night that has gone by, and to sleep, but no longer can I feel remorse, and I can sleep no more." So the ability to feel remorse in Orestes is very different from the situation with Electra. Orestes cannot feel remorse because when he acts, he makes an independent choice, and therefore he cannot regret his action. It is his determined choice. On the other hand, Electra is not free. She does not make any such determined choice, and therefore she feels guilty, remorseful of the situation, particularly about the murder of Clytemnestra. So Sartre would emphasize on this difference of experience between Orestes and Electra. So in a way, Electra is, we may say, a foil. We may say Electra helps us understand how Orestes is different from her and from other people. So Orestes cannot sleep anymore. That is a metaphorical way of saying that he must suffer because of his freedom. The suffering of Orestes, that is the price of his freedom. So then Zeus tells Orestes, "What about your gift to the people of Argos? What will they make of this gift?" That is the gift of freedom. And Orestes' reply is, "What they choose, they are free, and human life begins on the far side of despair." So I am actually covering this ground which I already discussed earlier. I covered it earlier. So freedom is essential to man, and man must not fail to realize his full potential. Man must not live the life of a slave by believing in superstitions and false ideology, and therefore Orestes' gift to the people is freedom. And once a man asserts his or her freedom, then he is on the far side of despair, which means that despair cannot touch him any longer. So he goes beyond good and evil, conventional good and evil, and he is independent and alone in the universe. So the next idea that we find in the play is this idea of loneliness or alienation, we may say. On page 121, Electra tells Zeus that I will obey your law, I will be your creature and your slave. I will embrace your knees, save me from the flies, from my brother, from myself. Do not leave me lonely, and I will give up my whole life to atonement. I repent. Zeus, I bitterly repent. So this attitude of Electra is diametrically opposed to that of Orestes, and she thinks that Orestes leads her astray, that Orestes is harmful for her. Why? Because Orestes wants to take away from her the comfort of being a slave, the comfort of being in a known world, the comfort of being without any responsibility. So Electra doesn't want that. Electra wants to remain a slave because she is incapable of taking up this responsibility. What is the responsibility? The responsibility of one's decision. So she says, I will give up my whole life to atonement. So the idea of atonement is related to the idea of guilt. So she feels that she has committed crime, she has committed something evil by agreeing to the murder of Clytemnestra, and therefore she must repent and she must atone. So this is the situation that we saw at the beginning of the play, that Aegisthus, after murdering Agamemnon, passes on his crime or his guilt to the entire population. And the entire population, believing Aegisthus, tends to think that they must atone, they must repent for that crime. So Orestes at one place says that, a little later he will say it, that you people of Argos, Aegisthus committed this crime and then allowed this crime to roam masterless on the streets. So the crime was Aegisthus' own, but he won't own up to it. On the contrary, he will pass it on to anybody and everybody who is ready to own up this crime. So we will see the difference in attitude between Aegisthus and Orestes at the end of the play. That Orestes would not only own up to the crime of murdering Aegisthus and Clytemnestra, but he would take away, or he would take the responsibility and would agree to suffer the consequences of any crime that Aegisthus or the people of Argos ever felt to be their own crime. So that is the position of a leader, we may say, or we may say that is the position of a superman, a superhero. So one who takes upon himself all the burden of other people. And after Electra says that I will repent, she runs off the stage. The Furies make as if to follow her, but the first Fury holds them back. Let her be, sisters, she is not for us, but that man is ours and ours, I think, for many a day. His little soul is stubborn, he will suffer for two. So the Furies let Electra go. They are not interested in punishing her. Why? Because she turned out to be a slave. She turned out to be without independence, turned out to be one who has the mentality of a slave. But they are more interested in punishing Orestes, who has a different attitude towards life, who asserts his freedom and takes the responsibilities of his own action, and who is not afraid of the consequences of this freedom. So according to existential philosophy, freedom entails responsibility, and unless one is ready to accept that responsibility and accept the consequences, one cannot assert one's freedom. So the existential world for a person who realizes his freedom is not a very comfortable world, because the person feels completely alienated from other people. The person feels that he or she is completely different from others, and therefore feels this loneliness, alienation. This alienation is vis-a-vis the world, vis-a-vis existence. And Orestes, when the Furies turn to Orestes, he gives expression to this existential alienation by saying, I am alone, alone. So the Furies think that probably he is, weakening, probably he is not ready to suffer in this way. But of course they are wrong. Then the tutor comes and tries to approach Orestes, but he can't. Orestes stops him, saying that if you come, then the Furies will tear you apart. So Orestes, in a way, is already threatened by the Furies and by the suffering. Then Orestes goes to meet the people, and the people are very angry with him. They are in a hostile mood. They would throw stones or they would attempt to hurt him, and the tutor is very afraid to open the doors, but Orestes compels him to open both the doors. And the tutor half opens both leaves of the door and takes cover behind one of them. The crowd surges forward, thrusting the doors wide open, then stops bewildered on the threshold. The stage is flooded with bright light. Shouts rise from the crowd. Away with him, kill him, stone him, tear him in pieces. So when Orestes hears all these noises, threatening noises, he is not bothered by it at all. On the contrary, he looks at the sun and says, the sun. So you can see this speech, just two words, the sun. So the sun stands for a lot of things here. The sun stands for freedom. So Orestes can look at the sun. The sun stands for liberation. So after the end of this darkness, which was all over there in Argos because of Eurystheus' crime, a new day begins when Orestes asserts his freedom, liberates the people of Argos, and looks at the sun as a symbol of this liberation. The crowd make threatening noises, Orestes drawing himself up to his full height. So here you are, my true and loyal subjects. So you see the sarcasm here. The subjects do not appear to be loyal in the least. They want to kill him, and that is the sarcasm inbuilt in the state of a leader. A leader who leads people to liberty is often betrayed by his own people. And so Orestes says, I am Orestes, your king, son of Agamemnon, and this is my coronation day. So he acclaims himself or announces himself as the new king. But unlike Aegisthus, he does not want to sit on the throne of Argos and stay there for a long time. So Orestes compares this situation to the earlier situation when Aegisthus, after killing Agamemnon, announced himself as the new king. Similarly, Orestes, after killing Aegisthus, here announces himself as the new king. But the similarity ends there. He says that I am now I have come to claim my kingdom, and you would have none of me because I was not of your kind. Now I am of your kind, my subjects. So how has he become one of their kind? By being a criminal, by killing somebody. So now the people are ready to accept him. How ironical. There is a bond of blood between us, and I have earned my kingship over you. So this bond can be created or has been created by shedding blood. As for your sins and your remorse, your night fears and the crime Aegisthus committed, all are mine. I take them all upon me. Fear your dead no longer, they are my dead. And see, your faithful flies have left you and come to me. But have no fear, people of Argos. I shall not sit on my victim's throne or take the scepter in my blood-stained hands. God offered it to me, and I said no. I wish to be a king without a kingdom, without subjects. So this is the first speech by Orestes to his people, but also the farewell speech by him, and he bids them farewell, tells them, try to shape your lives, all here is new, all must begin anew, and for me too a new life is beginning, a strange life. And then he tells them the story of the person in Skyros who took away all the rats from the town by playing his flute. Similarly, Orestes would take away all the flies, all the furies, and he strides out into the light. Shrieking, the furies flung themselves after him. Therefore, we see that there is a different ending for Orestes and Electra. The Furies let Electra go, but they follow Orestes. They pounce upon him. So this is a metaphorical way of suggesting that freedom has a price, that you must suffer the consequences of your freedom, that you will be alienated from the people. And what would be our comment on existentialism? If existentialism presents to us such a scenario, would we call it an optimistic philosophy or a pessimistic one? Now, evidently, Sartre would not think of an idealist optimism when there is very little to expect in this world, when everything in this world suggests that people must suffer either way, whether they are free or not, whether they are subjects or leaders, whether they are independent or slaves, they must suffer. But there is a distinction between the suffering of the people who are enslaved to an ideology and the suffering of a person who can see through the illusions of ideology and realize that he or she is not tied to any ideology and therefore is free. The suffering of that person is one of, we may say, philosophical realization that freedom also means you take upon yourself the responsibility of what you do and what you stand for, and you suffer the consequences. So if you are free, suppose you are an intellectual and you feel that you are free, then will you be able to point out to the state its mistakes? Will you be able to suffer the consequences when you become a critic of the state? So, for Sartre, philosophical freedom also means intellectual freedom. And of course, philosophers are intellectuals, though all intellectuals may not be philosophers. Alright, so we have come to the end of the play. Do you have any? The first question: The Flies was interpreted as a text favoring the resistance as well as the Nazi occupiers in France. How do you account for such a diverse interpretation, such diverse interpretations? So there is a paper. I think I have given you all the materials. So among those materials, there is a paper which discusses the Nazi question, and you may look at that paper, and the author argues that the play is written in such a manner that it can have double meanings. So a Nazi reader would find certain things, for example, the idea of the Nietzschean Superman, which would make him think that it is a play where a man who is independent asserts his independence through a violent act. So a man who is strong and brave and would not stop from committing a violent act if he thinks that that act would lead to a superior situation. That is also the goal of Nazi philosophy, if we would call it philosophy, that the Nietzschean superhero or Superman, he would not stop from violence, from killing, if he thinks that that will lead to a better situation. So The play encourages such a reading, but when we read the play in this manner, then we tend to overlook certain things which are also there in the play, which is Orestes' resistance to religion, to gods, and a person who would read the play from the point of view of the French resistance would emphasize upon this aspect of the play, that Orestes' denial of the power of the gods, or standing to challenge the power of the gods, that is a metaphorical representation of the resistance challenging the political power of the Nazi regime. So diverse readings of the play are possible. How did Sartre manage to write a play that satisfied two different audiences with two different ideologies? So the writer of that paper goes on to say that many ideological writings, many works address a double audience. For example, he gives the example of a black writer and says that the writer does not think that his readers would all be black, because many among the blacks would be illiterate. So he would target as his audience a section of literate, educated black people, as well as a section of white people who are enlightened, liberated, or liberal in outlook, who would also empathize with the black cause. Therefore, the work would have a double audience. And in this case also, this play has a double audience. Comment on Sartre's use of mythology. Would you call it traditional? Well, at the outset we can say that Sartre's use of mythology is not conventional. He is using the material of Greek myth, but he is not writing a Greek play. He is using this material to flesh out his ideas about a particular philosophical view. So the characters Orestes, Electra, Zeus, they could have been any other characters. Now, Orestes in Greek mythology, as you know, the concept of the curse on the house and the conflict between two houses, two families, that is the staple of the mythology. And Orestes, by taking revenge, would kind of fulfill that curse. So according to Greek mythology, a curse runs in a family for 3 generations. But for Sartre's play, all these have no meaning. So here we have a revolutionary figure who challenges the dominant ideology, and we have a God figure who stands for that dominant ideology, and we have a political figure, a king, who also stands for the dominant ideology. And Sartre is able to expose how religion and politics would remain hand in hand, hand in gloves perhaps. So the nexus between Zeus and Aegisthus depicts the nexus between religion and politics. Yes, Sneha, you are not very wrong in that. Of course, one of the results, or you may say the effects of this play, is to establish the Sartrean existentialism vis-a-vis contemporary dominant ideology. And he uses mythology as a tool to establish this ideology. Yes, you are not wrong, Sneha, but this needs to be elaborated. In order to establish an opposition against ideology, it is not necessary to always have, or to explicitly have, a philosophical point of view. So Sartre opposes dominant ideology, but he does not label that ideology. So we are not sure which ideology he is opposing. We may assume that he is opposing the slave mentality of the Vichy regime ruled by Pétain, who behaved like slaves to the Nazi rulers, German rulers. However, this takes upon itself some kind of universality, in the sense that this situation can be seen in multiple other contexts, and the play does not talk about any particular religion. So if you talk of Greek religion, Sartre here refers to Greek religion. Very cleverly, he won't refer to Christianity, but he makes it very clear. Any religion which kind of suggests a slave mentality, we may say that all religions suggest it, because religion expects man not to question this ideology, but to accept on the basis of faith. So when you stop using your reason, then you become a slave. And Sartre was always concerned with the question of gods. Throughout his career, he wrote on the question of gods in various works. Some people even believe that later in his life he kind of came to believe in theism, because he wrote so much about the God question. but that is of course not generally accepted. So from his early writings to the late writing, that is existentialism as a humanism, one of his late writings, Sartre has discussed the question of God, the issue of God. And I have given you two papers on gods. If you read them, then you will find the author discusses how the God question appeared in Sartre's mind from time to time. Now, from the very beginning he was an atheist. However, before Nietzsche, no philosophy explicitly rejected religion or accepted that God is dead. So post-Nietzsche, Sartre comes to this notion that God is dead, and this makes him think of the human situation. As long as we believed in God, as long as we believe in religion or in some faith, that belief is a point of reference. That belief makes us accept everything as the ultimate design of some divine purpose. But once that belief is gone, then we are in an anarchic world, and we do not see any purpose to any event or any act. So in this anarchic world, or this godless world, Sartre finds that the situation of man is like the existential hero or the Nietzschean hero, as in Orestes, who faces a world where he is alienated because of his realization of his freedom, and he is free to make certain choices and act. So freedom is meaningless unless you make a choice and act according to that choice. Electra refuses to make that choice and refuses to act. So through the situation of the existential hero, as in Orestes here, Sartre presents the human predicament of man in a godless world, or in a world where apparently nothing has any purpose or meaning, and therefore every man must create meaning for himself or herself by making a particular choice or taking a particular political standpoint. In other words, being committed to a cause, being engaged with a particular cause. Is it clear? So, the next question, why are there two protagonists in The Flies? Discuss their dramatic significance. Two protagonists, Electra and Orestes. So I already told you the dramatic significance. They are very similar in the sense that they are in a situation where they want to take revenge of their father's murder, and initially their situation was a little different because Orestes was taken away from Argos to Athens, and he almost did not have any memory of his childhood or of his father, whereas Electra had not only the memory alive, but she had also planned for a very long time for taking revenge. Now this initial situation gradually alters, and Orestes discovers for himself a cause, and he takes up the cause of the people of Argos, because he finds that not only Orestes and Electra are aggrieved by the murder of Agamemnon, but the entire population of Argos, they also suffer in the hands of Aegisthus, the usurper, the tyrant, and therefore they also need to be liberated. So from the very beginning we see that there is this difference between Orestes and Electra, whereas Orestes thinks about the people, Electra doesn't. Electra only thinks about her personal situation. Orestes does not care so much about his personal situation, but he takes up the cause of the people. So that is the first distinction, and therefore Sartre makes it clear that every individual should prioritize the people or the state, the country, before himself or herself. And then whether they should actually murder Aegisthus and Clytemnestra or not. On this question we see that later they become divided on this issue. Electra refuses to actually engage in this act of revenge, and Orestes, of his own determination, without waiting for Electra's approval, that is whether Electra would go all the way with him or not, without caring for that, Orestes takes this decision, murders Aegisthus, and then also murders Clytemnestra, because in order to end this situation or end the crime of Aegisthus, Clytemnestra also must be murdered, also must be killed, because she was also an accomplice and she also helped in retaining this status quo of the rule of Aegisthus. So in order to change the status quo, Clytemnestra also must be removed. So Orestes took this decision not for his personal reason of revenge, but because he thought that the people of Argos must be liberated, and they won't be fully liberated if Clytemnestra lives. So he has this broad point of view which Electra completely lacks. So in this way we can see that if we interpret this as a philosophical position, then we would see that Orestes takes the position of an existentialist philosopher who must engage with this world, whereas Electra takes the position of ordinary people who never want to change the status quo and always like to remain confined in their cocoon of comfort and are afraid of any changes. What is the role of Zeus in the flies? Discuss it with reference to the flies in the play. The role of Zeus, he is a representative of the institution of the powers which are in the helm of the status quo. So Zeus earlier made Aegisthus and Clytemnestra his tools, and Aegisthus killed Agamemnon without thinking much. Unlike Orestes, Aegisthus' act of murder was unprovoked. He probably killed Agamemnon for a petty gain, because Zeus promised to make him the king. So for personal gain, he killed him, not for any ideological reason. But then, when he reigned as a king, he was reigning only as the mouthpiece of Zeus. He didn't have any original power of his own. So he did whatever Zeus wanted him to do. Basically, Zeus wanted him to keep the status quo and keep the people in thrall, in a kind of captivity. The people were captive to this ideology, the false religion and the ritual of the return of the dead once a year, and the people were made to remain always in guilt. Now, we cannot say whether Sartre had it in his mind that Christianity also, in a way, makes people believe that they are in guilt. They carry with them the original sin. So somebody did something, their ancestor Adam. As a result of that, the people would carry this sin with them. So in Christianity also we have this sense, that the sense of guilt, the sense of atonement and all these things. So of course Sartre's play takes all these into account, and he exposes how religion plays in the hands of politics or helps the status quo. Both religious leaders and political leaders want to keep people in captivity. So if people can be made to think that they are sinners, they are guilty, they are criminals, then they can be better controlled. But if by chance people refuse to believe in this and say that no, they are free, they are not sinners, and even if sometimes it is important to act violently in order to get rid of the oppressors, even then it is acceptable, and they do not become sinners on that account. They do not become criminals on that account. So if you are a revolutionary and you are acting against the Tsar and you kill a soldier of Tsar's army, you do not become a criminal. So in the earlier class I explained the difference between a revolutionary and a terrorist. The role of Zeus is to maintain the status quo and to continue his rule over people, that is, keep people in perpetual slavery by making them believe in false ideology, and in this he makes the rulers or kings his accessories or tools. With reference to the flies in the play, the flies are the agents of Zeus. They are the agents of persecution. So in Stalinist Russia, the spies, the KGB people, they were the flies. In Communist Germany, the Stasi, they were the flies. So every state has its own agents who persecute people, who spy on people, who capture people, who torture people. Zeus is depicted as the Lord of the Flies. The flies won't harm anybody if Zeus stops them. So once he stops them and tells Electra and Orestes that now they won't harm you. He has magical power over the flies. Okay. So the flies represent the agents of persecution which all states need, and they are controlled by one supremo or supreme leader. Should we term the flies as Nietzschean or an existential play? Yes, you are right. The question is tricky. So it is not a question of either or, whether it is a Nietzschean play or an existentialist play. It is both, because existential philosophy stands on the ground prepared by Nietzschean philosophy. So you must be.
I think,
Yes.
I think all the ideas that the philosophers and the likes of Sartre they were using, the idea of nihilism and existentialism, all these are these ideas they cannot be they cannot be compartmentalized. So that is why there are so many overlaps. There cannot be nihilism without a tinge of existentialism. So that is why I think, because Nietzsche's idea of the when he announced the death of God, even he was not really. It was not like an achievement. It was more like he arrived at that conclusion. And existentialism is also it is also that kind of an idea that we do not know where this entire thing is going, but it is going toward the dark alleys. So I think that is why these two ideas are always overlapping. And even in this play, sir, yes, he is playing on the ideas of um, a, a group of people who are playing on their power, but then both these ideas, I cannot see them as separate things. So for me to take a proper stance is very difficult, sir.
No, you are right. Of course, you are right in saying that there is a lot of overlapping. So what we need to do is that we need to understand which aspects of the play are Nietzschean and which aspects are existential. Alright. So we have here, for example, uh, a Nietzschean, an application of the Nietzschean idea of the Superman. Well, Superman is one who transcends the limitations of an ordinary man, who becomes so powerful that he can transcend the limitation an ordinary man in Nietzsche's philosophy. The German word is Übermensch. Über means over, Übermensch. So a man who is over others or who is superior to others, such a man can be a result of philosophical practice or meditation, or in terms of modern science, a result of genetic engineering. And it is this idea of creating a super race that the Nazis happily borrowed from or adopted from Nietzsche. So Nietzsche actually did not talk about creating a better race by killing the weaker sections of the population or by genetic engineering, but that is how the Nazis interpreted Nietzsche. Okay. So here we have the idea of a Superman or Übermensch in the figure of Orestes. Orestes asserts himself as different from ordinary mortals because he is not bothered by the consequences of his actions. An ordinary mortal is afraid of being persecuted, of dying. Yes, Übermensch. And Orestes is not afraid of being persecuted or dying. Talk about Hegel while writing. So Orestes is not afraid of being persecuted or of dying, so he is not an ordinary mortal or an ordinary person. He is different from them. Okay, so Sartre borrows the idea of Superman or Übermensch from Nietzsche in preparing the character, creating the character of Orestes. Another Nietzschean idea is the will to power. Now it is this will to power which the Nazis happily adopted. I am always using the word adopted. Adopted means also you adopt something which you also adapt to your purpose. That is, you make some changes to the purpose. So when the Nazis adopt Nietzschean ideas, the Nietzschean ideas do not remain the same. They are altered by the Nazi way of thinking. So the will to power, which was a philosophical concept, that is used by the Nazis to mean that one must try to be powerful and dominate others. That was, of course, not Nietzsche's interpretation. So this will to power, do we find it here in Sartre's play? So here we find that by exercising his will, Orestes murders Aegisthus and Clytemnestra. So he exercises his will. However, there is a major difference between the Nazi idea of Nietzschean will to power and the way Sartre depicts it in this play. Orestes does not want power, or he does not want to rule over people. Therefore, he is by no means what the Nazis think a person who exercises will to power would be. So these are the Nietzschean ideas and how they are used by Sartre in the play. Third, so first I said Übermensch, next I said will to power. Third is nihilism, which of course is a kind of atheism also, because it destroys the idea of God. So this nihilism or this atheism is the Nietzschean nihilism that is adopted by Sartre in his existential philosophy. So earlier I told you how Nietzsche's nihilism and Sartre's nihilism are different. Nietzsche's nihilism was more aggressive because it would first destroy the older ideologies in order to create a new philosophy. Whereas Sartre found his ground already prepared by Nietzsche, and therefore his nihilism is moderate and not as aggressive as Nietzsche's. But in this play we find this nihilism and atheism in the fact that the way Orestes opposes Zeus and opposes religion, opposes institution, that is an expression of his nihilism. So nihilism, atheism, they remain very strong characteristic features of Sartrean existentialism. And the play is to a large extent therefore built upon the fundaments, the foundations prepared by Nietzschean nihilism. Discuss Orestes as a Nietzschean hero in The Flies. So this is already more or less covered. Would you like to add anything to what I said in discussing Orestes? Orestes as a Nietzschean hero. If you discuss this question, then you will have to focus on the Nietzschean aspects of Orestes. That is, how he is an image of a Superman or a Übermensch, how he uses or he expresses Nietzschean nihilism in his complete rejection, denial and destruction of institution, dominant ideologies, religion. So if you discuss these aspects, you are discussing the Nietzschean aspects of Orestes. The murder of Aegisthus and Clytemnestra is only an excuse for unfolding the existential thought of Sartre in The Flies. This is a very interesting question, or it is put in a very interesting way, that Sartre uses Greek mythology only as a tool or an excuse for propagating his existential philosophy. What do you have to say to that? Murder of Aegisthus and Clytemnestra initiates the action of the play, or we may say that it remains the motive of the protagonist at the beginning of the play. Electra and Orestes want to murder Aegisthus and Clytemnestra at the beginning of the play. So the action unfolds, the murder is accomplished, so that should be the end of the play. When the murder is accomplished, that is the catastrophe, that should be the end of the play, if it were a Greek play. But the purpose of this play is very different from that of a Greek play. So the end has nothing to do with the murder of Agamemnon and Clytemnestra. So, what is Sartre's purpose? Why does the play continue even after the murder, or the twin murders. After the twin murders, we see how Electra and Orestes, their paths begin to diverge. Vis-a-vis Zeus. So Zeus tries to provoke and to capture intellectually both of them. Zeus tries both of them to accept his domination. He even tempts Orestes and Clytemnestra by saying that if you accept my words, then I will make Orestes the king and Electra would take the place of Clytemnestra. So he tempts them by offering power. And how the two of them act in two different ways, that give us the essence of an existential point of view and an ordinary point of view. So a person who believes in existential philosophy or who thinks like an existential philosopher would assert his or her freedom. A person who believes in status quo and does not want to be disturbed, does not want the status quo to change, and who is basically afraid of being free, being independent, who is of a slavish mind, that viewpoint comes out as the viewpoint of Electra. So, what is then the purpose of this play? The play continues because Sartre must establish his point of view of the human situation. Now, the human situation for Sartre always talks about situations. People find themselves in situations, and when they are in a particular situation, then they are forced to take a stand or make a choice. So the drama that unfolds here is the drama of existential philosophy and the human predicament. That is much more of an abstract thing, much more of a philosophical thing, rather than a plot of a play. But Sartre is of course wonderfully successful in keeping the interest of the readers and viewers alive. We never feel that there is any lack of real action, but the later part of the play, that is after the murder, there is hardly any action. All that is there is deliberation. Two opposing points of view and a dialogue between them, different reactions from two different protagonists, and the reader is left to find his own interpretation of the play. Sartre does not say that, well, you all accept Orestes' position because he is my favorite hero, he represents the existential point of view. No, he doesn't. But he presents this as this difficulty, this dialogue, as a dramatic situation. If Electra accepted Orestes' point of view, then she would also have been persecuted by the flies. She wants to avoid that. That means that she does not want to suffer the consequences of freedom. She does not want to be free. So the reader is left to choose which position is acceptable to him or her. But of course the Greek mythological story, it ends after the murder of Aegisthus and Clytemnestra. The rest of the play is unfolding of the presentation of existentialism vis-a-vis our ordinary everyday point of view. Would you agree?
Yes, sir.
Discuss the significance of the Furies in Sartre's play The Flies. How are they treated differently in Sartre from Greek plays? Okay. Well, in Greek plays, the Furies have more agency. Aeschylus has a whole play on the Furies. They take the position of gods in some way. They are supernatural agents. They are not represented as just servile followers of some other god. So they decide on their own who they would punish and so on. But here they follow only the dictates of Zeus. So the Furies in this play, they are not represented as self-sufficient agents on their own, and they are presented here in the shape of flies, which is a very ignoble, we may say, humble form in which they are represented. So however much flies may disturb us, we are never afraid of flies. Sartre's purpose is to present the plague metaphor. Flies abound in a city where there is plague. So there is a whole paper that I have given you on Sartre's use of the metaphor of plague and all the nauseous, filthy images in this play. How the flies suck the fat and how they scour and suck the dead things, rotten things, and so on and so forth. So this is, well, you may ask, why does Sartre represent the Furies who are represented in Greek plays as very powerful and terrible agents of action? Why does Sartre present them here as meager flies who we hate, and they are Spartanaceous, we are disturbed by them, but we are never afraid of them? So then we have to see that there is this whole literary strategy of presenting the human situation as a plague situation. And in his philosophy, Sartre had developed this idea of nausea. He wrote a whole novel called Nausea to express this idea. This nausea is philosophical. That is, one feels nauseous when one finds oneself thrown in this human situation. That is, you live the life of a slave, but if you want to be free, then also you do not find any better alternative. If you assert your freedom, then also you suffer. When you assert your freedom, you make a choice, an independent choice. But at the same time, you must be ready to suffer the consequences of making that choice. So human situation is represented in existential philosophy as a nauseous situation. You never find yourself comfortable in this situation. And Sartre tries to represent this situation by using all these images of filth, ugliness, rotting things, corpses, flies, and so on. Even the heroes, Orestes, can be imagined as a plague. He is a plague to the city of Argos. He brings something dangerous and new to the city. But if Orestes is a plague, then was Aegisthus a panacea? Not in the least. The arrival of the flies in Argos was a result of Aegisthus' crime. So already in the city of Argos, a plague situation prevailed, and Orestes apparently comes to deliver the people from this situation. But metaphorically, Orestes also can be imagined as a plague to the city because he destroys the comfort of the people by offering them freedom. Did they want freedom? Did Electra want freedom? Does anybody want freedom? Unless one is a philosopher. So, this existential question is raised in the play, and Sartre makes the flies an appropriate image for the nauseous human situation. So the Furies here are represented as agents of persecution, but they are not independent agents. They persecute only when Zeus allows them, and they are represented as flies, the most ignoble, vile, humble, nauseous image that one can think of. Is it satisfactory?
Yes, sir. It makes it more clear.
How does Electra change from a revengeful character to one who suffers from remorse in the end in Sartre The Flies? So, here we find Sartre's dramatic excellence. Sartre's ability to make the play dramatic or successful as drama. How does that happen? He presents changes in two characters, Orestes and Electra. So, if a character changes in course of the play, then that character appears to be a credible character, a round character, whatever you say, a living character, because it changes in course of the play. We assume that anybody or anything for that matter that changes is living. So you are living if you change. So today you hate NG, tomorrow you may like me, then I will say that you are a living character because you have changed. You changed your opinion, and there is drama in that, because then we try to find out what are the reasons behind this change, how did this change happen. So Orestes changes from his initial indifferent, naive, youthful character to a determined revolutionary figure at the end. He acquires memory, he acquires a cause, and he decides to act in favor of the people of the city of Argos. Electra, however, changes in an opposite direction. Initially, she was very determined about her revenge against Aegisthus and Clytemnestra. But later, she becomes more and more soft and changes her stance, particularly under the influence of Zeus. She is afraid of Zeus. She is afraid even of Orestes. She is afraid of the Furies. And she does not want to take responsibility of the consequence of this crime. Initially, she tells Orestes that she was not responsible for the murders, but later she says that yes, perhaps I was. Which means, why does she vacillate? It indicates that she does not have the strong willpower to take a determined position. So she vacillates and she changes her position. And she accepts the dominion or domination of Zeus. And Orestes, who is a revolutionary figure who tries to liberate the people through a violent act, she is afraid of him because he is capable of this determination. He is capable of this violent act. So at the end we see she compromises with the dominant ideology and she yields to it, and therefore she is spared by the Furies. So she cannot become free. She remains enslaved in this ideology. However much Orestes tried to show him that golden world where the two of them would be able to live without any fear as free people, she won't buy that dream. So she stands for the ordinary disposition of people who are afraid to take a philosophical point of view. As long as their personal needs are satisfied. Ordinary people, they won't think of others. They won't take up leadership positions. They won't be revolutionaries. So we have the dramatic change in Electra from a determined revolutionary to one who compromises with ideology. So that happens even among revolutionaries. Some of them who become afraid of the power of the state, they enter into a secret agreement with the powers and betray the true revolutionaries. If we leave aside the political interpretation, even philosophically, it means that Electra represents people who are afraid of taking a philosophical point of view. Discuss the significance of the contrast between Sartre's depiction of Electra and Orestes. So this has been covered by all that we discussed today. Comment on Sartre's success in dramatizing the thought of existential philosophy in The Flies. More or less we have also discussed this. So this is again, it would be an analysis of the play, how Sartre tries to represent his existential philosophy through this play, and how he is using the materials from Greek mythology to represent a dramatic situation, and through the different reactions of the two protagonists, Orestes and Electra, he presents the difference between one who takes a philosophical determined standpoint and one who refuses to see through ideology, see through its falsehood and take a philosophical standpoint. and how in this play also Sartre exposes how politics and religion, they are like co-conspirators, they are hand in gloves, and they try to dominate people and to keep them in perpetual illusion. Alright, so that is all that I had to say. We still have some 10 minutes or so, so if you want to make any comments or ask any questions, you are free. So these are the questions that I thought are possible on this play, but of course there could be other questions. I mean, there is no limit to the way questions can be formulated. So if you have any other question which you think Calcutta University might pose or might set, you may ask me and I will discuss it.
Sir?
Yes.
Could you touch upon the idea of heaven and hell as it is represented in the play? Like you had mentioned in an earlier class that this play doesn't adhere to the Roman Catholic idea of retribution, and it's not an out-and-out Greek play either. But the characters were sent to hell towards the end. So could you explain that a bit?
Yes, of course. Okay, so earlier I already discussed how it is not like a Greek play, and Greek hell or Greek heaven for that matter is not they are not represented here. And I also told you that how in Greek worldview, heaven is not or heaven or hell are not looked upon as ways of retribution. Unlike the Christian point of view, hell and heaven would be destinations of people according to their sin or their atonement and so on. So in this play, neither Greek hell and heaven nor Christian hell and heaven are represented. But we may say that the human situation is represented in this play, and Orestes going to hell pursued by the Furies at the end of the play, and Electra continuing to live spared by the Furies do not make much of a difference, because Electra still remains a slave, enslaved by ideology. So if we think of hell metaphorically, then living one's life as a slave, one who is not free, one who is not independent, one who is always enslaved to ideology, that is like hell itself. So, as I told you in the earlier class about the ubiquism of Christopher Marlowe in Dr. Foster's, where Mephistopheles says, wherever I am, there is hell. So hell is everywhere, ubiquitous, because it is a state of mind. So if the life of a slave that Electra decides to live is like hell, then it is not much different from the hell where Orestes is taken by the Furies, or accompanied by the Furies. Orestes goes to some hell for, well, not retribution, but for punishment. Now, why is he punished? Because he asserts his freedom. And then again, perhaps the word punishment is not the correct word to use. We may say consequences. So, suffering is the consequence of assertion of one's freedom. In this play, it is metaphorically represented by Orestes saying, I cannot sleep anymore, I do not feel remorse. So not feeling remorse means that you have transcended conventional good and evil. Because if you believe in conventional good and evil, then if you think that you have done something evil by killing somebody, you feel remorse, or you should feel remorse. But Orestes does not feel remorse because he has transcended that conventional idea of good and evil. So that is another Nietzschean strain, beyond good and evil, transcending it. And how does he transcend it? Because he acts, or he decides to act, he chooses an action for a greater cause, not for his personal cause. So he kills Aegisthus and Clytemnestra for liberating the people of Argos, and that is why he doesn't feel remorse. So just as a revolutionary will not feel remorse if he kills the soldier of the Tsar's army. But here, philosophically speaking, a person who asserts his freedom, goes beyond conventional good and evil, does not feel remorse, and the situation in which he finds himself, he is completely alienated from his fellow beings. He is in the position of an exile. He is not a social being anymore. So, is that much different from hell? So that is the consequence, that is the suffering, is loneliness, and persecution of furies, persecution by furies, that can be interpreted as, all the mental persecutions that one feels when one is alone or when one feels lonely. Then the furies come and attack one. Whenever somebody feels lonely, he or she then feels persecuted because he or she lacks the comfort of society, the comfort of being, a part of a group. Okay, so this human situation, Sartre thinks it to be so nauseous for an individual, for a philosopher, that Sartre compares this situation to nausea. And in this play, he uses all these images of filth and the flies to represent this nausea. It is a philosophical nausea that a person feels when he generalizes on the human situation. So whether you call it hell or not, it doesn't matter. But you see that there is a qualitative difference between the sufferings of Electra and the sufferings of Orestes. Orestes suffers but still remains a free man. Electra suffers and remains a slave. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Welcome. Any other question or comment? Nobody has anything else to say. So with this I finish my assignments with you, and so this is the last class with you for the present. Okay, so all the best, and I hope that you will be able to write well and read the papers, the materials that I have given you. In fact, I read and highlighted some of them, but I am leaving it up to you. You read the papers and highlight the places that you think particularly useful and use that material in your answers. Okay?
Okay, sir.
Okay, then all the best. Okay, so I stop the class here.